Welcome to the Creepin' Real show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow us on Twitter at creepin_it and like us on Facebook at The Creepin' Real Show. Do you have a paranormal story you'd like to share with us? You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com.
Hello. Welcome to Creepin' It Real. I'm one of your hosts, Christy. I hail from Atlanta, and joining me is another Atlantean, Yardley, and a lovely lady all the way from San Diego, Moni. Yardley, how are you doing today?
You know what, Christy, I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Atlanta. There are a lot of things going on this weekend that I haven't participated in yet, but a little bit later on, hopefully I'll be at the Mercedes Dome watching the first game of the season here at home for the Falcons, so I feel pretty good.
You're going to go?
That's the plan.
Oh, that's awesome. This stadium is absolutely incredible. It looks like a resort with, of course, sports as the main topic. It's pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah, and you know what? The other fervor here in Atlanta is, our soccer team, the Atlanta United, is doing pretty well, and they had a game yesterday, so that was awesome as well.
Yeah, they broke attendance records, I think. That's what I was reading. So that's awesome. Moni, how are you?
I'm doing great. Actually having some lady friends over later. My family's away again. So I have a vat of sangria that I hope to find myself at the bottom of by midday over here.
Nice. I'm having a shitty day so far, but I'm hoping that it will improve as the day goes. Have you guys ever had all your stuff like not work at the same time? Like appliances?
Yeah. Because
just
when
all of a sudden
have to break. That's the rule.
And that's really much what's happening to us today. And I have no coffee. I'm waiting on my husband to bring me some coffee because he's an angel. And so when I get distracted or if you hear some noises, that's him bringing it to me because I'm basically going coffeeless right now. And that's not really good for me. Yeah. So anyway, well, Yardley, do you want to start us off with some weird news?
Yeah, you know what? I actually found something that is really funny and disgusting at the same time. Okay, there is an app that is out where you can rent a secondhand mechanical sex doll. Apparently, I mean, it's so insane. Apparently, what you do is you rent it through the app. You can customize the dolls the way that you want it. And you can rent them out for, a few nights at a time. As long as you've got the bread, you can rent them out. But also, after you send the dog back, another individual has the opportunity to use the app to rent the same doll. So before I just start hysterically laughing, I have to ask both of you, either of you can step up first. Is it one... It's over the top to be dealing with a mechanical sex doll, but at the same time, you're renting this doll over and over, from different people. So what is more gross to you, the fact that you're going to get the mechanical sex doll or the fact that you might be so thirsty that you'll rent one that was previously used by someone else?
Well, in all fairness to this poor sex doll, I guess wouldn't it be kind of like having multiple sexual partners? I don't know. I can't say I've been desperate enough to even consider a sex doll, but poor sex dolls, like, hey, I'm just like any other human walking around that's had multiple relationships, right?
Well, if you look at the bottom and look at some of the varieties of kind of cosplay that people get put on these dolls, you see the Wonder Woman one with the so she's got on the shin guards with like her toes out. It's pretty funny.
Oh my gosh. Moni, that sounds right up your alley.
Oh, yeah, thanks. So questions I would have would be like, what is the cleaning? Like, what do they make you do to clean these things in between? Like before I rented it, I would probably contact the company and kind of be like, let's see, do they bleach these items? Do they just, or, this is really gross, but bear with me. There's a market for used under things, right? Like people buy used panties and stuff like that. Like
they do.
Maybe some of the appeal
Huh.
or sexual deviance is
Uh,
use sex dolls. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there.
I used to I actually have like a business on eBay where I sold children's clothes, and somehow I do not know how I came across this. Basically, it was an envelope for sale, and this was how they got away with it. And inside the envelope was used underwear. And these things were going like hotcakes. I've never seen anything like it. We're talking between $150 to $200 a pair for used underwear.
I am in the wrong line of work.
I was just shocked. And men and women. I said, no boys or girls. That's gross. I mean, it's gross anyway, but you know what I mean. But so, yeah, I mean, Yardley, you did not expect this conversation to go over this way, did you? You were thinking sex dolls are gross. And we're like, yeah, but maybe that's what they wanted. Maybe they want to be gross.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that for some people, that is probably part of the appeal of thinking that there's some type of a filthy aspect to that. So it's definitely not surprising, but we'll definitely post the article in the show notes because it's got lots of videos about how they make them. And, you know, some of them just look really creepy. If you look at some of the slides in the slideshow, you actually have these guys like hugging up against the dolls and all of this type of stuff. And then they actually have a photograph of the sex dolls and they have like real women mixed in with them. So you try to figure out who's who. It's weird, but somebody's getting some paper off of it. So I guess in a creepy type of way, go ahead.
Is this going to be kind of like an Uber situation where not necessarily you're getting picked up, but you can just chill on your couch and shop and find, hey, I kind of like this one. And then it just ding dong. And you can watch its little progression to your house on the app. And there it is on your doorstep. It could be a pretty big deal.
But seeing as a lot of this appeal, it's the stuff that's in your head that I think that sexualizes the doll. So for me, I'm just figuring if people are dropping all of this money on the dolls, I'm pretty sure that they've got money that they could just, you know, pay a real person to dress up in some cosplay to have sex with them. I just don't really, I don't get the appeal to that because I don't think that that's inexpensive.
Sadly, a real person has thoughts and feelings and uses words. And these dolls, apparently this guy who's like a 5 in the slideshow is here with his hand on the thigh of this solid 10 doll. Yeah. And then in the next slide, he's pulling her head off. So, you know, if you don't like what she has to say, just decapitate her and it'll all work out.
This sounds like a great replacement for sociopaths and serial killers.
Yeah, I suppose so. These things just look so weird. I'm sitting here just watching. I'm just clicking through it, and the more I go through it, the more I'm like, man, this is a little bit too extra.
You can watch this later. We have a show to do. I'm just kidding.
Roger
that. The creepiest thing we've ever talked about.
We're like, Yardley, hello. Sorry, he's watching creepy sex doll videos.
I have moved on, ladies.
Okay, I'm glad. All right. Well, speaking of creepy, I thought I'm noticing a pattern in our quote unquote news. It isn't exactly all just really news. It's more of crazy or perverted shit, which is all fine, right up my alley. But I just find it funny that we call it news. Anyway, a dude arrived to his home after work and found a naked woman he did not know asleep in his bed the other day in California.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, he called the police and he said he came home and saw like a box ripped open on his front porch, which he thought was weird. And once he went inside, he saw a sandwich with like a bite taken out of it and an open beer on his counter, and a pack of cigarettes was missing. So then he keeps progressing through the house and finds this woman asleep in his bed, and he calls 911. And she just like wakes up, gets dressed, and quietly sits on the front porch until the police officers came and arrested her. But I can just imagine, I mean, you always hear like this happening in celebrities' houses where they're like, apparently somebody's been living in my house for a month and I didn't even know it because, you know, they're either not home or the house is, you know, 50,000 square feet. So you wouldn't even know somebody was in there. But it's not really often that you find out somebody doing that with just a regular guy's house. So I found that would be, I don't know what I would do if that happened to me.
It sounds like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's like they come home. Someone's been opening my Amazon package. Someone's been eating my sandwich. Someone is sleeping naked in my bed and she's still here.
Oh my gosh, that's killing me.
Yeah, that's totally got to be that's just weird. I don't even know how I would react to something like that. To be honest with you, I think at the end of the day, I think that that young lady's lucky.
Yeah, she is. I think if this was in Texas or even Georgia, she'd be heading out to the morgue because most people would just shoot first and ask questions later. If they see somebody in their bed, whether they're naked or dressed, they don't care. Oh, some strangers is in my bed. They're going to have to die. And that's pretty much, you know, how some states kind of, you know, California, it's like, oh, hey, yeah, that's cool. Just get dressed and sit on the patio and I'll call the police.
This is the sex doll that I ordered.
Exactly. Why did you open my sex doll package? Darn it. So what news do you got for us, Moni?
Yeah, I don't know what y'all are finding with your sex stuff and your naked people, but I want credit for bringing it back to the creepy. So Louisiana, a morgue had blood running out of it in a valve into the street from a funeral home in Baton Rouge. Mm-hmm. So the liquid mixed with the embalming fluid just started pouring out of the funeral home and into the street. And the funeral home has since apologized for any inconvenience. And they want you to know that they cleaned and disinfected everything as soon as they noticed. And let's see. It's not known yet whether they're going to be fined for the disgusting breach of human fluids that has gone into the street. The leak lasted for only about 20 minutes, okay? And it didn't get into the city's sewer system, says the city officials, which take that with a grain of salt. Yeah. So there's your weird news. There's just blood running down the streets. But it's okay, citizens. You're going to be just fine.
Isn't that like a sign of the apocalypse or something? Didn't I read that somewhere?
Yes.
Oh, man. So you know what? These are the things that you never think about in relation to funeral homes, that they do all of these embalmings and, you know, they have to store that stuff somewhere. I'm wondering, how do they actually dispose of it? I mean, from what I saw in the video, there's like a tank, and the video is horrific because you see it leaking out of this thing, and like the sidewalk is covered with blood. And I died laughing when I looked at the guy trying to spray it, you know, before the the people came in. Like, he was a dude who was at work, and the owner was like, "Yo, you got to go out there." And
he's like, "I don't get paid enough for this shit."
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, that's kind of horrible. But if you get anybody who checks out this link, you have to watch the video because it's definitely something that could get you nauseous.
No kidding. Next episode of Dirty Jobs. Spraying, embalming, and blood fluids. Gross. For sure. That's disgusting. Well, that's a pretty good. All of our news this week is pretty fucked up. So, well, congratulations to us. But Moni, yes, thank you for keeping it creepy and less sexy. Pervy sexy. This episode I am super stoked about because growing up, of course, like I said, in Roswell and all the crazy stuff that's happened in my life, one event that wasn't even mine kind of changed my view on aliens and everything, and that's Travis Walton, who apparently was abducted in 1975. And, you know, you grow up with E.T., which is cute and funny, and then Close Encounters, which was, you know, friendly aliens trying to teach us peace. And then you get to Travis's story, and it's just not the kind of story, you know, that gives you all the warm and fuzzy feelings that if there are aliens, they come in peace, or they're going to be cute, or you can have one as a pet or whatever. And after watching the movie and reading the book, it just really changed me in that I just couldn't keep his story out of my head for my entire life. I mean, this movie dropped Fire in the Sky around the same time the X-Files came out. So it was an interesting time where we were all kind of starting to get our brain wrapped around aliens and is there a cover up? And then this story comes out and really pushes that narrative along. Do you guys, what are your thoughts on his story?
You know, one of the things that stuck out to me the most, you know, this happened it was in the 90s, which is kind of ironic because during the 90s, just like you mentioned, you know, you had the X-Files and lots of paranormal stuff was kind of coming to them.
The abduction happened in 1975. But
that's right.
The movie came out in 1993. Right. But yes, you're right. The story became national in I think it was 1993. So you're right. It was all around that era.
And the fact of, you know, that a lot of these individuals who were involved in the story, a lot of them held, you know, really close to what they had told the police and authorities, you know, back then. And it's kind of a testament of what do you do in certain situations. It also showed that all of the decisions or lack of decisions that they made when this event happened ended up coming back to bite them a little bit, you know, a little bit later on.
Right.
And it's the type of thing, even if you're skeptical, when you see them go through all of the things like the lie detector test and, you know, all of these things, and they start to bring around the people who were thinking that they had murdered that young man, I thought that it was very believable that the things that they said could have been true. But like a lot of these stories, there's never really any evidence. So for the skeptic, there's stuff for them to eat up. But I don't know. I think that this story of all of the ones that I've heard of in the past was probably the most believable, at least to me.
I totally agree with you. That's the thing that really sticks out to me about this story is you have 7 people. They're not friends. They're just coworkers. And some of them don't even like each other. And they're going out to do a job and they're coming home and they're just good old boys that live, you know, live in a small town and work in the forest. They're hard, you know, somewhat hard workers and they work all day. And every single one of these guys passed the polygraph test. And I know everybody says, oh, these aren't, you know, you can't use that in court, which is true, but they absolutely do use them to check to see if some, you know, like, do I keep this person as a suspect or not? So that clearly they're enough to know if the police are on the right trail. And I don't know how you could have 7 people all pass a test and say that there's not truth to it. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, did it happen? Was it some group like delusion? But I really do think that what happened, they believe it happened. And when you watch the paranormal witness episode about the story, which they did an amazing job on this, I was just, every time I watch it, my heart breaks for them because some of them are estranged from their family because of this. And they don't live normal lives. They live with the story completely changing who they are as people. And some of them left home and never came back. And it's just, you can, you know, they break down while trying to tell the story. And how either these people are Shakespearean actors or, you know, they're telling the truth.
So this came out, as you guys mentioned, in 93. And it was the same time that the X-Files came out, also in 93. And at that time, I was 10 years old. So if this were to come out today, and especially with the influx of all kinds of news that we get from everywhere, fake and real and who knows in between. If it came out today and as an adult, I would say I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But having come out then, so I lived on an acre of land, which in Southern California is a lot. And my bedroom window opened to the bulk of the land, just to a big hillside. And I was always certain that the aliens were going to come. You know, my 10-year-old self, I lived there from my time I was 4 until I was 24. And I was certain that the aliens were going to come and into my window at night and just take me right out the window, and no one would even be the wiser. So I don't know if it was because I was 10 and this story and the X-Files too was all scary as hell, or if it was because when you're a child, you're more open to what could be possible than you are as an adult, because you've seen so many things that aren't real by the time you're an adult. But either way, to this day, I still feel like of all the things make believe that I've seen, this one very well may have happened, at least mostly the way that these men say that it did happen. And it scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Well, there's something else about this. Just think of the pickle that these young men were in. The fact that he disappeared, Travis, for 5 days. And actually, when you watch the documentary, it kind of shows how they felt guilty about leaving him there and, breaking out on him. But the 5-day lapse is one of the things that kind of accelerated, the investigation into these people, into the police and the authorities, thinking that they were involved in the young man's murder. And the fact that he came back, that was a blessing in disguise. But I think I was really sold watching these guys a lot older, really still feeling guilty, about leaving him there. And it's been so many years later, and they're just like, that seems to be the one thing that kind of breaks them down the most.
I agree with you. And I mean, let's think about this. Like I said, they're not friends. They're not, or they weren't when this all happened. And what are the odds that 7 guys, when they're young, make up this huge story and all 7 of them stick with it and say it happened for the next 40 years? I mean, there's just things happen, life happens. And, some of these people lost their family. And you really think that they're going to just dig their heels in and keep with the story if it didn't really happen? I don't think so. At least one of them's going to crack and go, just kidding, made it up. But none of them have ever done that. They have all stayed true to what they said, and to this day say it happened this way and this is how it happened. And how do you not believe that? Maybe I'm just gullible and naive, but like you said, watching the documentary on Paranormal Witness was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to me because I just kept thinking, what kind of lives would these men have led if this hadn't happened? I mean, what does this kind of thing do to somebody? And you survive it, and then you move on with your life with knowledge or that most of the planet doesn't have, and because you've seen it with your own eyes, and nobody believes you. Like, how do you serve? Like, what does that do to a person? I mean, I just can't imagine the feeling of going through your life like that.
Well, the first person or the first news outlet that was there was, of course, the National Enquirer. They've been getting it in for ages.
Man, these guys are like on it. They saw Bat Boy. I'm just kidding. That wasn't a real one. But yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, and now when I started to look further into it, when I decided this was one of the topics I wanted us to discuss, is what's Travis doing now? What is he doing with his life? And he's actually traveling. I actually brought this topic up on Reddit, or it's called Dreadit. That's the version of Reddit that's all based on like paranormal and horror, to ask people on there what their thoughts were about the show. And I would say 80% of the replies I got, or not the show, but the abduction, 80% of the replies I got were they believed it. They believed it happened. In which these guys and girls, they might really love horror, but they're not they're not like all just believe anything. I mean, they had really good reasons not to believe it. Some of them said it was made up because they were behind on their logging contract and they just made up this big story. And of course, I kind of went back and forth with them a little bit. But one guy on there commented that he went to see Travis speak. And he said, I never knew what to think about it until I heard him speak. And he said he was very believable. He said his slideshow was very rudimentary. And I'm thinking, what would you expect coming from a guy who's just a guy? Now, I asked him, what if he stepped in with this big show and this really impressive presentation? I would probably be less likely to believe him. But you've just got this guy who shows up. He's speaking to this audience of people that, you know, are at a paranormal conference and has his little, you know, Gray's alien slides, and it's very simple. And he said that was absolutely right, that it made him believe him even more because he doesn't have a big road show, you know. So he's actually, and I would love to see him and go see his show or his presentation, and that even more evidence, and, you know, he even told more about the story, a little bit more, you know, more detail, and it was really hard for him. He said he walked in as a skeptic and walked out as a believer that this really happened. So yeah. Anybody there?
It's kind of amazing because he went somewhere.
Hello? If I put you all to sleep, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. So I was just going to say that, I mean, he went somewhere during that time. He's not Terminator, where he just appeared, you know, naked in the middle of things and nobody noticed until he showed up with a gun and said, you know, give me your clothes. No. So, I mean, he was dehydrated when they found him. He was obviously either kidnapped or he was holed up somewhere where being naked wasn't noticed, which is also kind of odd. I mean, he was unable to get out of wherever he was during that 5-day duration. I feel like just the physical evidence when he showed up in the hospital of just his physical state of being, something happened to this man.
And that's what's crazy is what really just, you know, at the end, you've got the one cop who still doesn't to this day believe that this happened. And he called in the best polygrapher in the state to come and do this polygraph on the guys. The polygrapher walked out and said, these men are telling the truth. They believe this happened. And how do you still not believe? I mean, he's sitting there, you know, they end it with this guy saying, I don't know, I'd love to find out what happened someday. I'm like, dude, you know.
Yeah. Didn't they say that the polygraph tests, or when they had them all isolated, that they were in there for at least 2 hours, right?
It was, from what I saw, each, like 2 hours each.
Yeah, they were saying the polygraph test, or they met with that guy. So 2 hours is actually a very long time. And if you were lying about your story or doubting what you were going to see, and I think that the polygraphs are based off of your heart rate and things like that, right. Which I do think that those things are, you can control those. But I think 2 hours of getting questioned and not knowing what the person who might have gone before you said could be something that could wear down on you if you were lying. And the fact that a lot of these individuals pretty much stayed true to what they were saying and their stories were matching up. I thought that was interesting. So I would have to say that I would be on board more or less to lean towards, hey, I believe them. But you have to ask yourself the question, but what to say that somebody's telling the truth, what is it that they're necessarily honing on, as a truth? Like if I ask you a question, did Travis get zapped by a ray from the spaceship? And you were like, yes. Now, are you convincing yourself that that's what happened, or are you, or did it really happen? I'm the type of person I would be thinking, man, were there any power lines around? What happened? But when they illustrate what happened, like he got shocked and got thrown back a long way. And then that was when all of the friends left. So I don't know. I think these young men, especially at their age, I think if they were to able to go through 2 hours of questioning, I think that that's something that I don't think that a liar could probably hold up doing.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all have ever sat for something like that, like sat for a lie detector test or a deposition, but they grill you like a sausage. And I only had to go through it for 1 hour. If you had to go through it for 2 hours, just kind of the fatigue, I think, of being asked the same question, coming at it from different angles. And then they will purposely kind of try to make it a little less straightforward just to see if taking it from a different angle will get you to change your answer in any way. If you are lying, you will mess up at some point.
Yeah.
And
especially if you're wanted. Especially if you're wanted for murder or they're suspecting you of murder. I mean, these guys were nervous, scared. And can you imagine, they don't really know what happened to the guy. So how do you even, or what they even really saw? When you see things that you don't think were even possible, how does your brain process that? Like, how do you, somebody asks you a question, did he disappear? Did they take him? They don't know. They can only say what they think happened. So, and I know one of the guys didn't pass the test initially. It was the one that Travis and him did not get along at all. And I think the guy was probably terrified because out of everybody in the group, he was probably the one that they would be looking at because they didn't get along. But later, I think it was 15 years later or something, he did go back and do his test and he passed it that time. And so, yeah, it's just, I really get irritated because I get it. It's such a crazy, and to say that you believe it is even hard to say, you know, because it's so crazy. Yeah, I believe this guy was abducted by aliens and I believe that these guys saw it and but I really do believe this story. Like you said, Yardley, there's a lot of abduction stories out there and I'm kind of like, I don't know. This one, and it's only gotten stronger through the years. And you'd think as you get older, you become more kind of skeptical about things, but it just doesn't change. And that's very rare to have that, especially with so many people involved. I mean, everybody is staying to their story. And that to me is just makes me even more believe, makes me believe them even more. So I would love to eventually go see him talk, or I don't know if he's doing some sort of paranormal fair circuit or whatever. I'll have to look it up, but we will definitely put all the links of the Paranormal Witness episode up and his story. And he has a book, which of course came out after the movie. And I believe that was in 1996. So anyway, I love this topic. I think about it, I don't know, several times a year. It just pops into my head. It's always stayed with me and it's always affected me just to wonder, what are these people doing now? And what's their life like? And what's his life like? I mean, I can't imagine what he's seen and what he's experienced and how you just pick up and just move on and try to go on with the normal life. That's got to be really hard.
Well, Ms. Kopp, if he's going to be skeptical about the whole thing, clearly, if aliens did not come and abduct anybody, then a crime has been committed, and he should be continuing to investigate if he's going to be that skeptical about it.
Right.
Officer Smarty Pants.
Exactly. I wanted to cover also, topic change, we have been wanting to talk about Stranger Things. I think all three of us are really big Stranger Things fans. I know I am. Even my kids love it. And how can you not be? Yardley, you were talking about that Stranger Things 2 is coming. And I am super stoked about this. But I don't know, and I haven't done my research enough to know what is the premises. Like how are they going to create this new season? Have you looked into that?
Well, they did release a season 2 trailer. And for those who are listening in who might not be familiar with Stranger Things, it's a television show that debuted on Netflix and is set in the fictional rural town of Hawkins, Indiana, and it takes place in the 80s. And the Hawkins National Laboratory performs certain scientific research for the U.S. Department of Energy, but they're secretly doing experiments into the paranormal and supernatural, and they're doing some of these tests on human subjects. And it kind of starts to affect the people who are living in that community in very, calamitous types of ways. So there were a lot of people who watched the Netflix series. As we all know, Netflix, when they release a lot of their material, they just release it, all at once. So they had almost 20 million people in the first 16 days to check out the series, and it actually matched the viewership of shows like Daredevil and Jessica Jones, and even Making, of a Murderer, which is some of their flagship programming. So season 2 is going to debut on October the 27th. And what I was wondering, to kind of, to take the baton from what you were saying, Chrissy, where are they going to go with it? You know what? I'm not sure. I think one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to bring a lot more of the paranormal aspect of it into it. Because you remember before in the previous series, they kind of eased you into that as it went along. Mm-hmm. And when you watch the trailer, it seems like you're going to have a lot more of that. So one of the pivotal characters, I think the character was it Will? The young man who they were looking for, Joyce Byers' son, Winona Ryder's character, their son.
Yep.
Yeah. When, the whole point of the first season where the kids were trying to figure out where he went to, and he went to a place called the Upside Down. Mm-hmm. And that was when the show really got fun. So I think what they're doing, based off of the season finale, he started having these visions of things that he was experiencing. And I think that they're going to bring that in early in the series. So I think we'll have an opportunity to maybe see a little bit more of the other side from that character.
I think that the show and the group of kids that are in it is really similar to it in that it's funny. They really work well together. They have an awesome dynamic. And again, it's in the 80s. And I think you and I, Yardley, had a brief conversation about how awesome of a job they did portraying the 80s on the show. Because I grew up in the 80s. I'm the old one here. Yeah. And it is, and I was telling you, when you go in the kids' bedrooms, all their toys, I'm like, I had that. And I'm like, how do you find this stuff? The cars, the clothes, the decor in the homes, it's all exactly to a T my memories growing up. And what an awesome way to get every age group into a show, because my kids love it, and they love it because it's not terrifying. It's not like a horror movie. It's kind of creepy and weird and good, and the kids are funny, and they have kind of their own little interest in the 80s, and they're fascinated with it. But then you've got the parents watching it and just the nostalgia of that era, and it's just really good writing. I was blown away, because normally if something's not really scary for me, I'll turn it off and walk away. If it's supposed to be scary, it better damn well be scary. And this isn't exactly scary. It's just really good. I loved it. I thought it was so great. They're doing an awesome job. And I hope they can continue that momentum, because I hate, watching a show is like a relationship for me. It's like a commitment. And damn it, if you don't follow through every season, it's like a break. I go through a breakup. I'm like, why? And I pull out the wine, and so I hope they can continue the story and make it grow in a way that people aren't just going to be like, ugh,
For sure. And for me, it was a little different coming into it than for you guys. I'm out for work about 12 hours a day. Then I come straight home, take care of 2 small children. So when I actually do get to sit down and watch TV, and the odd chance that I actually get the remote, it has to be something really engaging. So, and just the way I am anyway, but especially after all that, is if something doesn't go boom, or something exciting doesn't happen. So unfortunately, it actually took me a couple of tries to get into the show. I enjoyed the nostalgia aspect. Of course, it was really neat to see Winona Ryder again.
Yeah.
But I watched the first episode and I was like, this is really neat. And then I kept falling asleep during episode 2. And I stopped watching for a while. And then I think it was either Comic-Con or WonderCon that I went to and saw how many people were cosplaying as Eleven. And there was so much fandom surrounding the show. And everybody was so excited about it. My husband and I were kind of like, okay, we need to give it another try. And my husband was saying that if we could just make it through like the 3rd episode is when things really started to pick up. So finally, I drank lots of coffee and made it through the 3rd episode. And sure enough, when they started bringing in the Upside Down, oh my gosh, I know you were saying it wasn't that scary, but the Upside Down scared the hell out of me. The thought that you could actually see and hear maybe somebody who had disappeared and they could have something really bad happening to them, and yet they're not there, like that whole other dimension thing. I'm really concerned about the next season coming up, though. Like, Christy, what you were saying about can they deliver? I'm not really sure, just based on what they did or didn't set up in the first season, where exactly they can go from there. I mean, because they kind of tied it up pretty well in the first season, and I don't know what they're going to delve into in the second that's going to make it worth watching. And unfortunately for me, I mean, I love the 80s. I do remember them enough for sure, but the nostalgia alone isn't going to make me want to go back and watch a whole nother season of a show just under the circumstances of not enough things going boom. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. And something else, I think for me, I definitely agree with you, Moni. I thought that they had a great stopping point, and I thought it would probably be cool if they made this sort of an anthology where those kid stories was in the 80s, and then like maybe the season 2 would be some creepy stories from the 90s, and then with some different characters, and then season 3, you know,
kind of like American Horror Story.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Because these kids, even if you look at them in the season 2 trailer in comparison to what they looked like in season 1, they're growing too fast. So I don't know if you can, you know, how long you can kind of drag this out, but we'll see.
I agree with you. It would be awesome to see the story a decade later or whatever. Like then you go to the 90s and you can see all the nostalgia from the 90s and a different set of kids of their age that they were in the 80s, and these things kind of happening to them. But I love Winona Ryder, of course, because I graduated high school and was in my 20s in the 90s. And of course, she was the 90s Molly Ringwald, you know, of the 80s. And she disappeared and had some stuff going on and then has come back. And her portrayal of the crazy nutso mom, which she's not, but everybody thinks she's crazy because of what she's saying. And she just did an amazing job. I was just blown away. It really reminded me of how awesome she is. And like, where have you been? You know, I mean, shoot, you shoplifted. I mean, think of all the shit that all these actors go through and, you know, continue on with their career like nothing. And she gets busted for shoplifting and it's like this big deal and she disappears. And it's like, you were really good. You were really talented. And I'm so glad to see her back. And I hope that she stays, you know, in the industry because she's really good. And it's almost like she's gotten better. So
Wino forever, y'all.
You know what? I have to say my MVP was probably David Harbour, the guy who played the chief of police. I thought that he did a great job. You know, he kind of reminded me once his story started getting cranked up a little bit and we started learning more about him. And once he got a little bit more meat to chew on, I thought that it made the overall story a little bit better. It sort of reminded me about how, you know, Breaking Bad was just okay the first 2 seasons, but then when Gus showed up, it kind of took it over the top.
Yeah.
And I think that his character did the same thing for Stranger Things.
Yeah, because he had that at first, that same old cop trope where he doesn't believe what the crazy mom is saying about her son. I was like, here we go with that same old stuff. And I think that's part of what made the first couple episodes so boring. And then as soon as he started to believe her and take action on it, he was a badass. And I was just like, okay, I can get behind this for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And his whole backstory was really good too. And I think that's what makes series so hard sometimes is the character development. Like that process can be sometimes boring. I mean, that's what happened with the Game of Thrones. And I always say, give Game of Thrones 4 episodes and you'll be hooked. But there's so many characters that you have to kind of go back and like give. And I think that's like with any show, that if you watch one and it's not interesting to you, and you cut it off, I mean, you're not really giving it a chance because it's impossible to just start and throw everything fascinating at you the first episode. You've got to do the character development so you know who the hell you're watching.
True, but give me a couple booms in the first episode so I stay hooked.
So, Moni, I saw that you were talking about what is Hell House? I'm sorry. I'm just reading this. Redefining the found footage game.
Hell House LLC was a little gem that I found last night. I was rocking a lovely migraine and was back and forth just vomiting and everything else. It was super fun.
You had your own horror show going.
Yeah, definitely. So I needed something kind of just easy and not a lot to follow, and something to talk about for today. And I found Hell House LLC. And the only reason I kind of started watching it too was because it had some decent ratings, which a lot of the free for Amazon Prime TV and movies have some really crappy ratings in the horror genre. And it was really interesting. It's basically about this group of attractive white people, which is always a little disappointing. But at any rate, they go and have a new hotel, an old hotel. It's all boarded up right outside of New York City that they are going to fix up and turn into a Halloween haunted house, which I think was kind of timely for this time of year as well. And of course, when they go inside, there's already some satanic type of stuff written on the walls. It's a little creepy. And as we go into it, we find out that the original owner of the hotel had some guests check in that never checked out. And the scrutiny around it caused him to hang himself in the dining room. And then you come to find out, spoiler alert, that, it's a really loose plot. But I really liked it because they did a lot of really cool things without special effects, without CGI, that made it really interesting, such as, of course, they're making this whole haunted house, and there's some talented young people who are coming up with strobe light effects. And so they're testing, like one scene, they're testing the freaks that they've put up in the basement to see if the strobe light effects are working. And they're on walkie-talkies, and they say, okay, cool. So ready, go with the strobe lights. So they turn off the light, and the strobe lights start going. And you're kind of getting this weird effect that one of the freaks that they have in the basement, the full-size dolls, is coming closer to the guy. And of course he says, how many freaks did we have in here? And they said 3. And he says 3. And of course there's a 4th one that sometimes is way closer to him when the strobe light comes on. And then sometimes it's further back and you don't see it at all. And just little things like that. It was well enough done that they left enough to the imagination, and yet they showed enough. And I just think it was worth a watch for if you're looking for an easy found footage film. That, yeah, I'm calling you out, Blair Witch. You may have been the first, but the ending I thought was horrid. That has an ending that at least is creepy. Legitimately, at one point, I had all the lights out because of the migraine, and at one point, all the lights go out in the movie. All the lights are out of my house. And then my dog pounded up against the side of the house right at that moment, and I almost died. So there's some legitimate creepy moments in there, not a lot of cheap scares. And I do recommend, for free on Amazon Prime, Hell House LLC, made in 2016. So it's a nice contemporary show where you get to watch some not super annoying, but just annoying enough pretty white people just kind of get killed.
I have a love-hate relationship with found footage. I don't know why. Some of them, they just make me crazy. I can't stand them because it's just the same regurgitated crap. And then some of them, it can be my favorite genre of horror. It completely creeps me out. If you do it right, it's great. and I love it. But because I love it, then if you do it wrong, I'm just like, "Urgh." So I'm always interested in, found footage.
I think you'd like this one because it's not, I was thinking too, from a migraine perspective, I was worried that they'd be running around, screaming and crying.
Yeah.
There's no screaming, there's no crying, there's no shrill noises. It's not a big bouncy one. It's just basically they're documenting their process as they're creating this haunted house. So it's a pretty easy on the eyes as far as that goes. And it's pretty believable that they would be filming what they're filming. It's good. I think I really do think you might like it, and they leave enough to the imagination, but yet you get figures cloaked in black and some pretty cool stuff going on. There's a few plot holes, a few parts where I'm like, did I miss that because I wasn't feeling well, and I kind of rewound and still didn't get it. I actually found a thread on Reddit where the writer talks about some of the things that were cut that made it make a little bit more sense, and it filled in some of the gaps. So I don't want to spoil them here, but if you are watching and you think that you're just missing something, it's not that it's too highbrow for you. It's because they cut it out. So don't feel stupid.
Okay. Yeah, I hated the Blair Witch. I hated it. I hated it when it first came out. I loved the marketing behind it because they made it like it was true and this really happened. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see this movie. And then I watched it and I was so disappointed. I really was. I loved, which some people hated, Cloverfield. I loved it. I still watch that movie almost once a year I watch. And then I loved Paranormal Activity. Well, the first two, now they're on like 10 and I'm thinking, all right, we get it. Yeah, okay. The concept's kind of been, like I said, just beaten completely to the ground. But so does anybody else have any favorite found footage movies that they like?
Wreck.
What did you say?
The Wreck films, REC.
Yes,
the ones that are,
I love those.
Brazilian or something originally, and the original ones are great, and the remakes are great, and the sequels are good.
They're absolutely
really
right.
Good. They're really scary.
Yep. The one. Now I'm on the spot and I can't think of the name of it, but the remake for the States where she's tagging along with the firemen and they go to, what is that called? It's Quarantine. That's what it was called.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's basically America's version of Wreck. And same thing. Oh my gosh. They did such an amazing job with that. Oh, I mean, so freaking creepy. Can you imagine just tagging along with the fire department and then be put into the situation that she's put into with an apartment building being sealed off and people basically getting rabies and killing each other. And it was, but the second one where it was in the airplane was stupid. So that really pissed me off. But yeah, love me a good found footage film for sure.
While you were describing it, a little gem that a lot of Americans might not have seen, Troll Hunter, and you probably laughed at me.
Great movie. No, it was great.
Yeah, 2010, and even my dad liked that one, which he's usually like, "Why do you watch this stuff? It's so stupid." But he actually was the one that turned me on to Troll Hunter. So there's another recommendation for you creepers.
Yeah, love me some good found footage. So I will definitely check that one out.
Well, I definitely have to defer to you ladies on that. Those aren't the types of things that I necessarily watch, but you have piqued my interest on checking out some of this stuff.
What kind of genre of horror do you like, Yardley?
Well, in the 80s and the 90s, just the straightforward hack and slash stuff, like, Jason and I think that Freddy Krueger's a little bit more nuanced than Jason, but I'm probably more along the Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees type of horror genre. It's just something about a bunch of blood, and then you already know once people start having sex, that they're next up the bat to die. The whole the black person dies first trope. I mean, it's just that's the whole thing that's kind of awesome and annoying about those, but I probably lean more towards the Fangoria magazine type horror.
Yeah, that's the last stuff I watch. I'm not big into slasher movies. I don't really care for Nightmare on Elm Street or Jason or Halloween. I'm all about paranormal or just really weird, unexplainable, all that. I'd rather take that, because how many times can a person like trip and fall running from a dude, or it just gets like, come on, you know?
Well, think about it. Actually bringing up Freddy Krueger, this is going to actually tie into the conversation that we had last week about it. But they were going to include Freddy Krueger into it, as I think one of the things that Eddie was very scared of.
Oh, really?
And I think, they decided to leave it out. And I thought that it was actually good that they did, because once you insert Freddy into that in any capacity, it's going to take away from, Pennywise. And something else that might hearten both of you is that there's going to be a director's cut of it, and with an additional, I think, 13 minutes. So we'll see how that works out. But I had to bring that up since we were kind of, tying in that I loved the hack and slash type horror flicks.
No, you're coming up on the perfect month for the slasher flicks, so go to town. I'm always, every October, I do the complete marathon of the Twilight Zone, because, of course, me growing up watching the Twilight Zone, it was still reruns. I'm not that old. But it was my favorite. And I have my favorites, but I watch every single episode of every single season of Twilight Zone in October. And I just stay away from the slasher stuff. It just does not interest me at all. But I think we all have our little hidden gems of horror that we prefer. And that's why it's so great to have so many people, to have it talk about, because you like certain things and they appeal to you, and I do. And Moni, what are your favorites?
Oh, I will be your guys' bridge, because I am a horror. I love it all. I want more of it. My thing is, it just has to be done relatively well, or have some new aspect to it, but bring it all from every side, please.
Awesome.
That's the way I like it.
Well, that is the perfect ending to the show. That's the way she likes it. The horror. Yardley, would you like to give them your social media tags?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
Moni?
You can follow me on Twitter at Rebel Moni, MONY, and Instagram at Moni Bear, BARRE.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye, creepers.
Until next time.
All we got is a mattress and a bone. Days go by faster and faster, in the howling wind, clanking and the laughter. I recall just what I'm after. Oh.